What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York calling from Zoom again, and this time we are here with Djamila of Ithaca. Great to be able to talk with you. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited.
Yeah, I'm super excited to talk to you as well. Your new album, They Fear Us, is easily one of my favorite albums to come out in the year 2022. Fantastic, fantastic album. What was the sort of thought process behind the making of this? Was this like just picking up where you left off after The Language of Injury, or was this meant to signify like a new beginning for Ithaca in a way?
I think, yeah, a bit of column A, a bit of column B. So it was kind of, we started writing this album, yeah, pretty much immediately after The Language of Injury. But obviously, the pandemic happened and all of this kind of thing. So yeah, I think we all had the opportunity to kind of take some time to really think about what we wanted to write about. Um, and I think it happened very naturally and very organically. Um, so yeah, I think our last album, The Language of Injury, was a very sad record. Um, yeah, there's a lot of sad feelings in it, and kind of naturally, as we sort of sat down and thought about the ways in which we'd grown and changed as people since writing that album. A lot more anger came out instead this time, I think.
Well, that it's really funny you mentioned that too, because when you compare the language of injury to "They Fear Us," it almost seems like there is a different like underlying emotion present throughout all of it. Did that emotion was that just do you start the songwriting off feeling a specific way, or do you almost kind of like seek that emotion out in order to make the songwriting happen?
Um, I don't think I personally don't think I really do either of those things. I never set out to write a song with a specific theme or like emotion in mind, I guess. It kind of always happens the same way where I'll just write and whatever comes naturally. Um and not really knowing necessarily what it's about, and then it's only once it's finished that I'm able to look back and be like, oh, that's what that's about, or that's what those feelings were. I feel like it kind of just pushes its way out on its own.
hmm Well, I find that the music, and I know some artists don't really like this term too much, or depends who you ask, but I've always thought that Ithaca's music has a very experimental element behind it in terms of its structure and the different vocal techniques and the different sounds. Is it fair to say that it's fairly maybe easy to incorporate new things, or you're not really confined to a specific style or a specific sound, and experimentation is kind of welcome in the songwriting process?
Yeah, 100%, absolutely. With this album, more so than the last one. I think The Language of Injury was our first full length album. And, we were different people back then. And it was like 20, I think it was 2007 or 2018 when we first started writing it. Um, and I think we were definitely more maybe concerned about fitting into certain genres and fitting into a specific scene or group of people, whether that's socially or musically. Um and then yeah, with this one, it was kind of just like, fuck it, let's just, sorry,
No, you're allowed to. It's all
I
good.
saw. Okay, good. Yeah, we kind of just stopped caring about that sort of stuff. We really like let go of the idea we have to be part of the metal scene or the hardcore scene or whatever you want to call it. We really don't care about that stuff anymore, and we just want to, we're always going to be that kind of band. We're always going to be a heavy band, but just really having the freedom to incorporate so many different ideas from different places in music is so liberating and so freeing, and not having to worry about what other people are going to think. And I think part of that came about really because we spent so long just in solitude, and we weren't able to be in the scene or play shows or do anything like that. That we really just were able to get in contact, like sort of yeah, kind of get in contact with like the music that we really love without anyone else's influence.
Mhm. Well, I mean, you could tell, like, as a fan of Ithaca, when you play me the Trespassers EP and then Language of Injury to now, it almost, you could tell what song would be off of what. I kind of wanted to know a little bit
Mhm.
about your lyrical process in a way because you have multiple usages of your voice, and I think the lyrical subject matter is very open to interpretation, but it's also very in your face, and really it's very relatable, but it's also very thought provoking as well. Do you need to hear music in order to come up with lyrics, or could a lyrical idea maybe help influence the music itself?
Wow, yeah. I I write a lot, but it's not necessarily, you know, lyrics. It's kind of just stuff. Um, and then yeah, I've always really loved writing to the music more so. I mean, the whole thing is always a collaborative process. Um, but what I really love is when we have sort of the main ideas down and the main riffs down, and you know the bare bones of it. It's not going to be what the end product sounds like or what the song is going to sound like. But Sam has such an incredible brain, and he comes up with these melodies that are just like, you know, guitar riffs and stuff that are just out of this world. And I find that so inspiring. So a lot of it comes from, you know, Sam's writing. And a lot of Sam's writing definitely invokes like a certain emotion in me, I think, a lot of the time as well. So it's kind of a mixture between being inspired by what the other guys have written and also thinking like, this is stuff that I've already written. These are lyrics that I've already written, and they would work really well here, I guess. Um, it's a lot of like puzzle work, I think, and a lot of patchwork, and it's always been like that for us. I don't know, but then I don't really know anyone who writes in a different way. So I feel like it's like that for a lot of people.
Well, being that you have both a very aggressive sound to your voice and a very serenading and beautiful melodic aspect behind it as well,
Oh,
do you almost feel do you almost feel like you're expressing different sides of who you personally are? Like, is a different usage of your voice expressing not just a different emotion, but maybe just a different side of who you personally are?
yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I feel like it's quite interesting. That you know, in the early days of the band, I never did any singing at all, and I kind of swore it off and said that I never would. I just wasn't interested in doing it, um, because I went to school to sing, and went to university to sing, and I had some really traumatic times there. So when I left, I just never wanted to sing again. Um, and but over the sort of the development of our style as a band and how we've grown as people and how our writing has sort of matured, I think it really gave me that just I felt comfortable enough to do that. And I think it is definitely a more vulnerable side of me, I guess. And also like kind of going back to what I said earlier on about not really caring about fitting into certain boxes and certain genres, you know, I never wanted to be that kind of like metalcore band and be boxed into that category of like, oh, they sing and they scream and all this kind of stuff. What you know, once I sort of gave up the idea of that being important, like that doesn't matter anymore. It was like, why shouldn't we do it? Do you know what I mean? Like, if we want to do it, why shouldn't we do it? We didn't want to be perceived in a certain way, but actually just stopped giving a shit about that sort of stuff, and all the rest kind of came naturally, I think.
It's so to hear you say all this is actually because when I the way I interpreted this album was this new album is that like there was almost kind of like an essence of either finding oneself or a cathartic like essence of freedom or like an escapism in a way. It
Mhm.
almost seems like I really look at this album as not even just a way of confronting demons or conquering demons, but it's almost kind of like the post conquering like the path forward in a way. Like it feels like it's a good method of looking forward. Do you want this album to be open to interpretation, or do you kind of want to pass on that sort of positive message or any specific message for that matter?
I think both. You're like both. You're so right. It is definitely that vibe. It is, you know, if I always say like the language of injury was the fuck around, and this album's the find out. Like
Wow.
it's about being hurt, and it's about the idea and the possibility that recovery and healing is possible. And so many, like, I know it sounds corny, do you know what I mean? Like it can sound corny to some people, but as a band, personally, we've all been through so much in our adult lives, and we've all spent time, having to try and recover in different ways. And when we wrote this album, we realized that like we were so much closer to actually finding ourselves as people, and we'd done so much work on that, and we really wanted to like share the message that it is okay to be who you are, you know. um and it doesn't mean that like, oh, we've healed, everything's great. It's about that journey. And for me personally, I think a lot of it as well, a lot of it, it's kind of got two sides to it, because it does have that like positivity and that positive message, and I think you can really hear that towards the end of the album. And then
Definitely.
the front half of the album is so much more angry, and I think for me personally, that was a lot of the rage that I had built up, whereas through the first album, a lot of that rage was directed inwardly at myself, and there was a lot of self-loathing. This sort of album was a lot more like directing that rage outwards at other people, and the idea of making people holding people accountable, I think, and also making them pay.
Well, because when you write about difficult times and how you overcome them, it's obviously a very cathartic process, and and it does help heal. But at the same time, when you have to utilize past traumas or past trials and tribulations and your own demons as a source or a subject matter, does that also maybe make the creative process a little deteriorating as well? Like, do you feel like maybe I've always said when darkness is the subject matter, sometimes an artist could become victims of their own product in a way.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's very interesting. It's not something I've ever really thought about, but I think, yeah, it's very easy to get stuck in your own pain. And a lot of people do that. I've definitely done it in the past. Um, and when you write about those things, you find yourself reliving that pain over and over again. And then when you play live and you have to sing those songs again, you're just doing it to yourself over and over again. And sometimes that can be very cathartic, but a lot of the times it can be very draining, and it can sort of have a negative impact, I think, on yourself. So yeah, I think that's why I really really love this album, because of the kind of message that we're trying to give, that you don't have to dig yourself a hole and sit in it for the rest of your life. You don't have to do that, actually. And kind of share a little bit of hope, I guess, that like it might not feel like it, but it is possible to dig yourself out of it.
Yeah. Well, a great friend of mine once told me that there's no such thing as rock bottom. There's just the point where you decide to stop digging. So, like, I think,
There you go.
yeah, and that's kind of I thought of this that quote when I heard this album because it again has that effect behind it. But do you think that the meaning and the concept of the lyrics or the music could also evolve over time as you evolve? Like, do you maybe look at stuff off of the Trespassers EP or the Language of Injury or now with maybe a different perspective? So when you sing it live, maybe the meaning has evolved as you evolve as well?
Yeah, I guess so. Like the stuff from our first EP, Trespassers, we don't really play live anymore, but on the occasions that, we used to play it live, and when I listen to it, um, those songs and even songs off of Language of Injury, those songs were written when I was in such a desperately dark place, and they were really painful to play live. And now when I listen to them, I feel very, very sad, but for different reasons, because I feel like I hated myself so much when we wrote those songs. And now when I hear them, I'm kind of just like, like this album. I'm angry at everyone else. I'm angry at the people that made me feel that way, actually, and I feel so sad for myself that I had to feel that way. Um, so I definitely look at those songs in a different way now. Um, and yeah, I think perhaps, with time, with They Fear Us, I think maybe those songs will evolve to have different meanings to us in the future. But I hope that they're still, you know, triumphant, and I hope we still feel just as good about them in the future as we do now. And you know, like I say, this that's kind of what this album means to us. But we never want to tell people what the songs are about. Like we like to say, like, oh, this is how we felt when we wrote it, or this is like the sort of overarching sort of message of the album. But for specific songs, we really just want people to listen to them and take what they want to take from it.
Yeah, I mean, you can't get you could show this album to thousands of people, and I don't think one or two people are going to feel the same way in terms of how they feel
Mm.
it. Because when you go from In the Way to Holds Beheld, like that from start to finish, there is like such an emotional roller coaster, and I think like it's not just the lyricism that could be open to interpretation, but it's also just like the sound and the feeling in it. There's some I've heard some songs that are as you know depressing as they could be, and they are like people's source of light, and vice versa. Some of the happiest songs make people totally miserable. So it's really, I think, just an emotional roller coaster throughout the entirety of They Fear Us.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And we I really like feel very passionate about having albums be a journey, and wanting people to feel like different emotions when they're listening to it. I would hate for someone to feel just be like sad throughout a whole album. Do you know what I mean? Or
Yeah.
or just be angry. Yeah, maybe that's just a thing that we like to do. But you know, like when we wrote The Language of Injury, the whole idea behind that album was that we wanted you to feel desperately sad at the end of it,
Yeah.
because that's how we felt. We wanted to end it like with a crescendo and then have it cut off, because we wanted it to be disappointing at the end. We were like, no, actually there's no hope.
Wow.
And then with this record, it's the complete opposite. We're showing you the anger and the emotion and stuff, but then we want you to go on a journey, and at the end we want you to feel reprieve. We want there to be a catharsis for you.
Yeah, and I think it's a journey for the listeners, but I think every song, or even album for that matter, is almost like a snapshot for you, right? Like I feel like for an album for us is the beginning of a journey for us, where it almost seems like an album for you is the end of a journey for you.
Yes, exactly, 100%. Because when you listen to an album, you're hearing it for the first time and you're taking it in for the first time. And for the people writing it, um, like you say, it's the end of the journey, because we've gone through, months, years, the process of years of writing it, and recording it and playing it. And so for us, yeah, it's really like the culmination of a very specific journey that's very personal to all of us in different ways. So yeah, for me, like hearing They Fear Us, the album, for the first time, was so emotional, because it was like the end of the journey.
Mm.
It was like, wow, this is the end, like we've done it.
Well, when a specific emotion or an idea is serves as the armature for a specific song, and you're working on a song, because sometimes you're working on a song for hours or days or weeks, maybe even years. Like, do you find it maybe like the longer you work on something, the harder it is to sort of like maintain the emotion that initially sparked it in a way?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's quite a natural thing for anyone who writes music. You play it so many times, you go over and over and over, and even when you're playing it live, it's quite easy to sort of be quite detached from the original emotion behind the song, and like the way that you felt when you were writing it. But every now and then, you get to like sit down and listen to it and just be like, wow, yeah, like you say, they're snapshots as well. So um this I feel like it's better when we're not touring, because I love touring so much, but you sing the songs every single night and you kind of take it for granted a little bit. you know. It's easy to sort of go through the motions. Um, but then when on our off time, you know, when we're not touring and stuff, occasionally I can go back and listen to it and be like, wow, holy fuck, like I remember that. I get that snapshot, that like photo memory of like how I felt when I wrote it.
Well, when it comes to the songwriting process with all of you, is it better if everybody in the band is feeling the same way and everybody is on the same page, or could everybody in the band maybe feeling a specific way? We're all individuals, we all have our own experiences. That can maybe help enhance the songwriting process if you're all feeling differently.
I think so. Yeah, like none of us are ever going to feel the same way at the same time. You know, we all recognize that we've been through different things, and but we've all been through hard times. And even if you know, other members of the band, even if some of the other guys aren't feeling the exact sort of emotion that I'm feeling at the time, they will always be able to relate to it because they've been through that at some point. You know, so it's not necessarily about all of us feeling bad at the same time because that would suck. Like
Yeah,
if we all sat down in a room together and we were like, wow,
that's a very
we all
toxic band right there.
right, like yeah, we all feel like shit. Everything is horrible. Everything is terrible. You know, that would be the worst thing ever because my bandmates are like my best friends and they've helped me through some really, really horrible stuff, you know, and I like to think I have for them as well. And we do that for each other. So when they write and when I write, we know it's about different things. But you know, if we all felt the same at the same time, I don't think we'd be able to help each other through that stuff.
Yeah, definitely. And or your band would not sound like this at all, and it would just be like the most depressive doom with like the all at the same time. You never know. Maybe you would be a different style.
Yeah, we'd probably be like, I don't know, just like probably like a shit black metal band or something. I don't know. I mean, that would be really fun as well, actually.
Yeah, yeah. You never know. Break out the corpse paint. but when it comes to getting that creative energy, whether it is for writing the lyrics or tracking the vocals, any part in particular, in order to get that sort of creative spark, do you need to kind of like put yourself in a specific place in order to cultivate ideas, or does inspiration or ideas just strike out of the blue?
Um, I think it can happen both ways. Sometimes I find it really easy to write a melody or a lyric, you know, and I just have that like flash of inspiration and just think, yeah, this is 100% what this should be. And other times it is hard work, and I think that a lot of the time that comes with um, overthinking things, and if you're like me, you have crippling anxiety about your own work. And I'm my own worst enemy when it comes to that sort of stuff, you know, and I'm my harshest critic. So the amount of stuff I wrote for the album that didn't make it on, that I was like, you know, didn't even want to share, or I had shared with the guys and was like, this is dog shit. And they were like, no, it's amazing, you know. Um, yeah, it can be difficult sometimes. It's never a linear process, I think.
Yeah, no, it can never be. There, I don't think there's ever been, and I could be wrong, but I don't think there was ever like a linear song made. Like we're gonna write the verse first, then the chorus, then we're gonna write a new verse,
Yeah.
and then the next chorus, and then we're gonna put the solo here. Like I think like every song was more or less like pieces pulled together, put into particular one particular spot.
Yeah, I think at that point you might as well just get AI to write your songs for you. Or just, you know, if you've got like a boardroom of executives,
Oh,
just like get them to do it if that's what you want, you know?
oh, I mean, if I could take the credit for it and get the money, I mean, I'm not gonna say no, but
Oh yeah, I
uh,
mean, you know, if I could do that, if I'd be writing songs for other people, I'd be absolutely minted by now. You know, I'd be rolling in it, rolling in the cash, maybe.
definitely. But is it better for you if you write? Because isolation is such a great fuel for creativity. Sometimes, is it better to come up with ideas when you're alone, or do you prefer to come up with ideas when you're in the company of your bandmates?
God, yeah, both. But you know, when we're in terms of like the actual writing process, we've always been a band that love to be in the same room, ideally. And with this album, we couldn't. We had no choice. Uh, we it was COVID. In the 2 years that we wrote this record, I think we saw each other 3 times as a band. So in between all of the lockdowns in London, I live in Germany now, but back then, we would book like weekend, like sort of like weekends or like a week to like go away and write.
Wow.
So we would see each other for these couple of days, and we booked these different like little cabins just by on beaches just around the UK, just anywhere quiet, and have like a little writing retreat so we could sit down together. And it was amazing because, you know, we're all best friends as well, and we missed each other so much. And then every time we did that, we went into another lockdown afterwards. So it was just like we couldn't win. We couldn't win at all. So most of the album was written remotely, really. A lot of writing online, writing on our computers, sending each other stuff. Towards the end of like the last lockdown, I think recording studios opened again. So I was going into studios on my own, just like completely on my own, and just laying down demos and stuff like that to then take home and send to them and be like, what do you think? And it was just not the way that we're used to writing at all. It was really hard. I think I struggled with it.
I mean, and you know, not, and I can imagine how much that sucked and everything, but maybe that agony and that is what led to making this album sound so good at the same time. So
Oh.
maybe it represents the pain of separation leads to a great form of unity.
Yeah, I think we've spoken about it between ourselves quite a lot. Like, you know, what if? Like, what if the pandemic never happens? You know, it would. There's no doubt in my mind that it would be a completely different record.
Yeah,
But we will never know.
we will never know.
We'll never know. We have no regrets.
Yeah, and quite frankly, I don't want to know either. I've made peace with understanding that everything's meant to be. I have two more questions for you, and I got the most difficult one when you're ready.
Okay, go.
How do you know when you're finished with a song?
Oh my God. When I've literally, when I have no hair left on my head because I've ripped it all out and I'm just fucking done with it.
That was a very dramatic answer. I like that one. I appreciate that one.
I know. I think I will never be done with the song. That's my answer. I will never be done with it. Um, because you know, will always feel like I'm done with the song, and you know, like other stuff we've written, uh, however long, you know, years can pass, or you know, whatever, even months, and I'll listen to it again and be like, wow, fuck, why didn't I do this instead? Or you know, this would have been so much better. Or yeah, like you can be done with a song whilst you're writing it, and you know, at that point in time it's finished, you know, to how you want it at the time. But my feelings always change. Like I said, I'm my own worst critic, so yeah.
As we all are. Artists, being an artist is like one of the, you know, it's one of the greatest things in the world, but it is also one of like the most self-destructive paths one can take. As we create,
That's the truth.
yeah, we destroy ourselves to create something before us.
Oh my God, yes, very poignant. Yeah, I agree, it's hard.
100%. And the final question I wanted to ask you is, though, going back to your live presence, because is there maybe at all a similar energy into playing live as you do when you're songwriting in a way, or do you consider them almost two completely separate entities and two different forms of self-expression?
There's definitely a correlation between the two. I think anyone who's seen us play live will know. We're very I feel like we're very aggressive and we're very abrasive live, even when the music or the this part of the song isn't necessarily. And we've always wanted to like sort of have a very strong stage presence, and to be quite honest, be quite intimidating, because a lot of our music is about the time that we spent, you know, being beaten down and being told that we weren't good enough and not being able to be ourselves, and our presence not being tolerated, whether it's in the hardcore scene or, you know, in other parts of our lives. So I feel like, Sam does a lot of like aggressive staring at people, and yeah, everyone's, very like their stage presence is very over the top, and that's quite intentional. We really want just people to know that we're there.
Do you find that
And
because oh, you were saying?
I was just gonna say, yeah, I think that's you can kind of hear that in the music too, I guess.
Well, do you find like because the studio where you're recording, it's a very static and very confined environment, unlike a stage where you're like going in where almost a free for all. Do you almost feel like that makes it kind of difficult? Because this does, I mean, They Fear Us has a live energy. I was able to cultivate imagery of what this would feel like live just because of how raw and organic it was. But in a studio or in a
I love
vocal
that.
booth where it's anything but that, do you find that maybe that's an extra obstacle or an extra line of things you have to overcome?
Probably, yeah. I mean, specifically for me, because like, I fucking hate recording. I hate it. I would rather do anything else. I really don't like recording. Never have. Um, and I have really terrible like red light syndrome. Like my anxiety just goes through the roof when I have to record. Um, and I've definitely gotten better over the years. And with this album, our producer, Lewis Johns, was so incredible. Like he knew like kind of my struggles with it, and how I felt about it. And he worked really hard to sort of create an environment that was really like that made me feel really good about it. But I've always found that when I record, I have to push myself to the edge emotionally anyway, just because of how much I hate doing it. Because it's all that fear and all that anxiety and all that self judgment, just punching me in the face, basically. So I don't really have to often try hard to find that emotion because I'm already on the edge,
Yeah.
if
Well, I
that
mean,
makes sense.
that's how Slipknot recorded Iowa. Like, I mean, and I don't recommend any of this, but like, Corey Taylor legit would deliberately hurt himself with the making of that. Like, he once walked into like, I heard a story. I think it was the song Left Behind. He like walked into a
Hmm.
room butt naked and threw up on himself, and then started tracking the vocals. So
Yeah,
I just
I
hope
mean,
I just
if it
hope he didn't get it on
works.
the mic because other people got to use that. But like,
So grim, yeah.
yeah.
But yeah, there's like, I feel like a lot of bands do that sort of thing. I can't remember who it was, but we always like talk about there's a tour documentary. I think it's like I can't remember what band it was. A band that are recording an album, and like their producer makes them like run laps around like the parking lot. Um like do laps around the block, and then like run straight into the studio and start recording vocals when they're like completely exhausted. And just stuff like that, I always find it really fascinating. And yeah, like I say, I don't need to do that because I'm already in like a pit of despair when I have to record anyway.
Yeah,
But
yeah. You.
I find it interesting the ways that people kind of bring out that emotion.
It's BYOD in the studio. Bring your own despair.
Oh my god, yes.
Yep. Well, I mean,
That's it.
my favorite black metal band, Life Lover. I mean, they have done some of the most disgusting, gruesome shit to themselves while recording. Hence, why they're not around anymore.
Oh god.
But like, unfortunately, pain is the ultimate paintbrush. But going back to the question asked about playing live, though, because in the end, you are just taking material that you wrote on the album and replicating it in a live setting. So there's no songwriting, there's no that. So is there anything remotely creative about playing live?
Absolutely. I think, yeah. I feel like playing live is super creative, but it's very much in the moment, you know. We could never be a band, I've seen bands over the years that are, heavy bands, but they have such a choreographed kind of stage presence. Maybe I'm being judgmental. Even, metal bands and hardcore bands that will play songs, and, even bands that, you go on tour with and you see them kind of scream the same way, do the same hand gestures, fall to the floor at the same time in every song. And, I get it and I respect it, but that could never be me because so much of our stage show is based on, interaction with people and like how the audience is feeling and stuff like that. So I feel like there's a difference between playing live and performing, if that makes sense.
100%. 100%. And
Yeah.
to like you're 100% right. I love asking like hardcore bands this like if you almost have to rehearse the crowd interaction aspect or the stage presence in a
Hmm.
way. Like did you like is there like a stage diving class in a way or something like that?
Exactly, yeah, like that sort of thing. And if they play a song that has like a sad interlude and like doing the like struggle hand and like all this kind of stuff, and like, oh, this point in the song, I'm gonna look up and all this kind of stuff. I love that. I live for the drama, I love that. But like, I don't know. I've always felt like there's a fine line between putting on an emotional performance and it looking rehearsed, I guess.
Yeah.
Um, Maybe because I am a performer, I'm being judgmental about it. But I would never want people to think that our live performances are rehearsed like that.
Yeah.
Because when we play live, we're all such disgusting, like sweaty messes. I could never remember a fucking choreography. Do you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like I'm barely keeping it together. So
Fair enough. That does sound like though a great comedy movie though, like mosh pitting or hardcore class. Like learn how to really be hardcore. Well, today we're gonna learn about how to headbang. Today we're gonna learn about how to crowd kill. Today we're gonna learn about how to stage
yes.
dive, and just everybody gets hurt. There's a different person getting hurt in a different way every day.
I mean, I want to make that movie. That would be sick. Like that would actually be a great comedy movie.
Maybe we're onto something. Who knows?
Yes.
Yeah. So before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time today and for such an awesome discussion. This interview has been longer than usual, and I love it when we get lost in conversations like this. Is there just anything else with Ithaca that you would like to promote with the release of They Fear Us? Is there a chance you could bring Ithaca to the U.S. one day? We would love to have you here.
Oh, we would love to. We get asked a lot about coming to the US, and it's been a dream of ours since the beginning. But as always, finances are always the issue. So we are working on it. We're definitely working on it. Hopefully, some point very soon. Otherwise, keep an eye out because we've got some cool stuff coming out soon, and we're doing a bunch of really cool festivals next year as well, and some more touring. Um, so yeah, just like I don't know, listen to the album, maybe buy it if you like it. That would be nice. That's kind of it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, everybody. We are here with Ithaca. They Fear Us. Be sure to pick it up. It is absolutely awesome. We will see you next time on Heavy New York.